Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, February 24th, 2020.
Commissioner Villegas, Garcia, James, Davis, and Coloza are present. President James, you do have a quorum. May we start with bureau introductions, please, starting with the Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning, Ali VC, LA Sanitation and Environment.
Good morning, Wesley Tenageri, Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning, John Ollinger, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Al Bazi, Streets LA.
Good morning, Richard Saragumba, Street Lighting.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we did receive one speaker card under general public comment. We have no commentary under the Neighborhood Council commentary section. We did receive speaker cards on items number 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 for today's agenda. In addition to that, we did receive 2 emails that came in on item number 7 that have been printed and distributed to all commissioners as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and start with general public comment. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. I hope we all had a good weekend. I like to read. I like to read the newspapers. I like to stay up to date on a lot of things. This is an article from Tuesday, February 18th about the housing crisis for vets. Began with long ago jolt about a VA hospital in Sylmar that was collapsed because of the earthquake in 1971. So I'm thinking, there's a few hospitals that are closing down that would make great locations for the County Board of Supervisors to look to invest money in, to buy those hospitals and upgrade them and keep them for the residents that are in the area because it's good public relations, and also to help house the homeless people and veterans. I spoke about putting veterans in the VA, by the VA hospital, renovating some houses. You have an insurance company that has graciously decided to cover the costs for the county health department. I don't know what to tell you. People make bad investments all the time. People make good investments. People invest in gold. People invest in heavy metals. People invest in oil. People invest in livestock. The owner of this company decided to invest in the County of Los Angeles. You should be gracious hosts and let him do what he wants to do with his money. It's his money. He has to pay. It's his company. They have to pay. It's very simple. You sign a contract if you're over 18, is it right? That's legal age. You're obligated to cover the cost of that contract. And the county says, oops, we don't want to do that. Well, there's a lot of businesses that think otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Agenda item number 1, Council District 11, construction order, Mantua Road, retaining wall, replacement project, emergency pre-qualified on-call geotechnical, structural, and construction services contractor list. Recommending that the board approve a construction order for the Mantua Road, that's 225 to 239 retaining wall replacement project with Joke Heavy Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $533,960 with a not to exceed limit of $640,752, including contingency. And secondly, authorize myself or 2 members of the board to execute the construction order after approval as to form has been obtained from the city attorney. On number 1, Mr. Schmidt.
Good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, Dr. Campos, and Mr. Jordan. Patrick Schmidt, Bureau of Engineering. We are here today to seek the award of the Mantua Road retaining wall replacement project. This project was advertised through the Emergency Geotechnical Structural Contractors List, a list of 9 qualified pre-qualified contractors that was approved by the board on February 25th, 2019. These contracts were executed on March 29th, 2019 and are for 5 years and expire on April 28, 2024. The Mantua Road project is a replacement of a deteriorated retaining wall. So the scope of work is going to include the removal of vegetation, the retaining wall itself, some slough, some asphalt pavement, and a concrete curb. And then we will construct a new 258 linear foot of bulkhead. The bulkhead will consist of precast concrete panels with steel beams set in pre-drilled holes. We'll backfill behind the wall and put a handrail at the top of the wall, and then do some hydroseeding to replace the pavements that were removed and the curb. On January 7th, 2020, bids for the project were solicited from all 9 contractors on the list. On January 21st, 2020, 4 bids were received by the board, of which Jilk Heavy Construction was the lowest bidder. Jilk's bid was in the amount of $533,960, which is 12.8% below the city engineer's estimate of $612,310. BOE staff recommends that the board execute a construction order for the project with Jilk in the amount of $533,960 with a not to exceed limit of $640,752, which includes contingency. Funding for the project in this amount, $640,752, is available in the SB1 SB1 Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Fund, Fund number 59V, Department 50, Appropriation Unit number 50, SKZQ. That concludes this report, and I'm available for any questions.
Yes, so any questions at all on agenda item number 1? Straightforward. I don't have any questions. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 1. Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Schmidt. Is there a second? By Commissioners Davis and Villegas. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Any issue sending number, thank you. Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We'll send number 1 forthwith. Agenda item number 2 is a sole source purchase order. Alpha Laval Incorporated replacement, this is in Council District 11, replacement plates, Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, recommending that the board authorize the purchase of a replacement set of plates for existing plate and frame heat exchangers located at the oxygen generating facility at the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant with a maximum cost of $135,000, including taxes, shipping, and handling. And secondly, direct the Department of General Services, as authorized by the city charter, to create a sole source one-time purchase order for the vendor Alpha Laval Incorporated for the purchase of the aforementioned item. On number 2, Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Again, good morning, Arnold Sachs. And although the state and the city and the county all think that global warming is a problem, global warming, it could be a problem. But you know what is a bigger problem? Acid rain. It still exists because we still get rained on. And so the oxygen generating facility is used to equalize the pH level in water. You know, in San Francisco, they took down the dam because it was too acidic from the runoff. So it's free flowing now, which means that this acid doesn't build up. There's a lot of pipes in the city that end up bursting, some from old age, but some get rotted through from the acid, so they have to flush them all the time. So it's important to understand, you know, there could be a solution. And there's something that can be done, changing the power source, removing coal. It's a big producer. But unfortunately, there's other countries that are upgrading their living conditions because they own the economy to do that. So you have to have something you can offer them in exchange. There's some things that should be looked at, not necessarily on a city level, although it wants to be a global player, but maybe on a national level. Some people come together with some thinking ideas. I have some good ideas about that. I'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. On agenda item number 2, Ms. Simons.
Good morning, President James, Commissioners, and Bureau representatives. I'm Sherry Simons, Environmental Engineer with LA Sand and Environment at Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. And just for clarification, the oxygen generating facility at Hyperion, it supplies oxygen to the microorganisms in the secondary treatment process to remove suspended solids and organics, and its operation is critical for treatment quality and for permit compliance. Now, the facility has several pieces of large mechanical equipment that are cooled by a 600-gallon per minute closed-loop cooling water system. And that system has 2 Alpha Laval M30 plate and frame heat exchangers on it, and 1 unit's online, 1 is standby. And those heat exchangers can foul. And due to the critical nature of the equipment, the plant maintains a critical spare available for swap out to reduce the amount of downtime when there's preventive maintenance. And the existing spare set it's extensively cracked, pitted, and corroded. And the plant recommends to purchase a new set of plates because at this point the cost of repair is quite comparable to the cost of replacement. And the expected service life of a new set of plates is expected to exceed that of a repair set. The current set, for example, has been in service nearly 30 years. And the manufacturer offers a longer, more comprehensive warranty with new equipment than with refurbished equipment. And this purchase was approved as part of the Hyperion Capital Equipment Replacement Program. And the plant also requests to sole source for original equipment manufacturer parts. In particular, Alpha Laval, the original equipment manufacturer, guarantees equipment compatibility and to maintain existing capacity, heat transfer rate, pressure drop, and other performance criteria. In addition, they will not honor warranties for failure due to the use of non-factory replacement parts. And also, as I mentioned before, Hyperion has 2 of these Alpha Laval M30 heat exchangers in service. These plates, often when plates are damaged, they can be swapped out for other units or between sets. So we'd like to guarantee that compatibility. And let's see, and in addition, maintaining this, like I said, this does maintain standardization, and it reduces the number of different maintenance procedures that are needed at the plant.
Great, thank you. And the 7 points of justification for this sole source, which you just summarized, are listed in the written record as well. Mr. Jordan, any questions, or rather I should ask you a question. Is the City Attorney's Office satisfied with the sole source justification?
Yes, we are, for the
All
reasons
right.
stated.
Any other questions? Then I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 2, seconded by Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? We'll send number 2 forthwith. This moves us to number 3 in Council District 11, a sole source purchase order for inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometer replacement. I'm sure we do those all the time. Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, recommending that the board first approve the selection of Thermo Electron North America, LLC, to be the sole source supplier to replace an existing inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometer system in the Environmental Monitoring Division's metals unit. And secondly, authorize sanitation to request the Department of General Services to create and enter into a sole source. There's probably only one place you can buy this thing. One-time purchase order with Thermo Electron North America, LLC, for the procurement, installation, and maintenance of the above-referenced inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometer system with a budget not to exceed $100,000. Mr. Zuma, hi.
Mr. President, Commissioners, Bureau representatives, Legal Counsel, Executive Officer, good morning. My name is Tom Juma. I'm with LA Sanitation. I'm here to request approval for the purchase of inductively coupled plasma optical emission instrument at a cost of $100,000. This is a replacement instrument to replace the one that we're currently using right now that is aging. The instrument is used to analyze about 3,000 samples every year for metals, precious metals, and the tests are required by the NPDES permits for the 4 water reclamation plants that the city runs. Without this instrument, the city runs a risk of not meeting its monitoring obligations as stipulated in the permits, and runs the risk of being fined for missing those. The cost of outsourcing these tests would also be very high compared to running them in-house. I also request that the purchase be sole sourced because we already have instruments from Thermoelectron right now. We are very familiar with them and their software, and will require minimum training for us to implement the instruments. Also, the purchase of shareable consumable parts would be a lot easier if we kept the current vendor that we're using, Thermoelectron. We also figure that it will be a lot easier to interface the new instrument with our current laboratory information management system that we're using, so we will not require expert help to configure it. With that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the board report does indicate that this system is exclusive to this supplier. Mr. Jordan, again, assuming that the city attorney's office is okay with the sole source justification?
Yes, we concur with the recommendation.
Okay. Any questions on number 3? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Villegas. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 3 forthwith? We'll send number 3 forthwith. Agenda item number 4, Council District 6, Amendment number 1. Memorandum of Agreement, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Cost Sharing Commitment, the Ozone Demonstration Project, Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant, recommending that the board approve and authorize the Director and General Manager of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee, with the concurrence of the Mayor, to amend the Memorandum of Agreement between Sanitation and DWP regarding DWP's cost-sharing commitment for the initial phase of the Groundwater Replenishment Project and the Ozone Demonstration Project. Mr. Sachs on number 4.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. So I'm looking at this. You have groundwater, which needs to be replenished, which is one of the reasons why they should remove the concrete from the LA River so that the groundwater gets to be replenished. And you have the ozone, which is the atmosphere, which is like not the lowest level of the atmosphere, but an upper level of the atmosphere. So I'm just thinking what the connection is between the groundwater replenishment system and the atmosphere, which is like, I don't know, where does the ozone start? 2 miles up, 3 miles up? I'm not really sure. So it's just an estimate. So there could be a difference of 2 miles between the two of them. What would be the connection? What would be the connection for the Department of Water and Power to be concerned about ozone demonstration projects? Unless, of course, they're looking to eliminate coal, which is one of the things they're trying to do. They should also be looking at groundwater. Again, the connection between the two? What? Where? What? I mean, and it just doesn't make sense in the long run. And I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation, and I'm sure it's going to be a good one. But to me, as a taxpayer in the county of Los Angeles, it doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Ms. Munoz. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, City Attorney, and Dr. Campos. I'm Jolene Munoz from LA Sanitation and Environment. I represent the Water Reclamation Division that oversees Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant and Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant. I'm here today to discuss the amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement between LADWP and LA Sanitation for the Ozone Demonstration Project. The Ozone Demonstration Project is the initial phase of the Groundwater Replenishment Project, as President James read earlier. And the Groundwater Replenishment Project is to help the city, it's one of the biggest pieces to help the city meet the goal of Executive Directive 5, to be able to increase local water supplies, and also become a more sustainable city. The ozone demonstration project would be the first time that we get to spread water at the San Fernando, to replenish the San Fernando groundwater basin via Hansen Spreading Grounds. We add the treatment of ozone. Ozone is a form of drinking water and now wastewater treatment. And what it is an oxidant, and it attacks chemicals in the water. It also attacks organics, making them easier to degrade through biodegradation through the soils. So the plan of this project is to add ozone to our existing treatment, and then the water will go through an existing pipeline to the spreading grounds where it will percolate through the ground, and microbial biological activity will continue to treat the water before it gets to the San Fernando groundwater basin. This memorandum of agreement amendment is for adding the primary equalization tank to Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant. This is a 6.75 million gallon tank, which will be installed at Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant to allow us to equalize flows and increase the amount of recycled water we're producing for this project. This amends the original agreement, which was $6.6 million, by $63 million, bringing it up to $69.6 million. And this allows for DWP to front fund sanitation in doing this project. So they will be making an initial payment of $6 million and then subsequent quarterly payments of $9.5 million until they reach the $63 million, because they've already paid us for the original amount, which was for the ozone demonstration project installation.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Is this is connected to the joint statement made a few months ago, or commitment by the mayor's office with DWP and sanitation regarding our new water recycling goals, correct?
Yes, for 100% water recycling goals. This water that we're taking for the groundwater replenishment project at Tillman will not go to Hyperion, but it will be part of that equation to be able to recycle all of the water that we're producing within sanitation.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Villegas.
Thank you, President James, and thanks for the thorough explanation. Just a quick question, and I think it's good timing seeing all the movement that the state's going through as well with the Delta and doing more water conservation. I just read that this morning. I heard your explanation on the whole ozone piece and being able to place that in our basins, our spreading grounds. Is there, I understand that when we do that method, it's distilled water. Are we going to be, no? Okay.
No, distilled water is kind of like when you boil water and then you'll collect your condensate, right? Ozone water, you're just adding ozone. And ozone, while it is in the atmosphere, you generate ozone by taking oxygen and splitting it with an electrical charge, so that you take your, tell me if I'm getting too technical, but an oxygen molecule is O2, and so you split it into the O's, and then you make O3, which is ozone.
Okay.
And then you apply it to your water in a side stream injection.
Okay. I appreciate that. I was just, at another, I was at another reclamation plant where we also use ozone, but we also add chlorine to it before it goes out to the ocean.
So that's for disinfection. It's a much higher level of ozone than what we'll be using here.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Great stuff today. From spectrometers to ozone. Commissioner Caloza.
Thank you, President James. Nice to see you again. Thanks for your briefing today, and for, I know we met about this specifically, and you went over some of the timelines, which I thought was helpful to know, and thought it would be great for you to share with the board and everybody else. But can you kind of go over just the timeline for design, construction, implementation?
Sure. So we started the project in 2018, or that's when we initiated to be able to do the initial phase, which is the ozone demonstration project. We're currently in construction or installation. We've received all of the equipment. Most of it's been installed. We're still integrating it into our system. DCT is an 80 million gallon a day plant. It has two different phases, two separate phases. Normally, because of the reduced flows to the sewer due to conservation, we use just one of those phases, which is 40 MGD. So we'll be running this project through our second phase of the plant, and we have to integrate that along with the existing connections that we have to DWP's system. We're hoping that with some of the I'm probably going to have to come to board again for that project so that we can discuss some of the finances with it, and then we can move forward and complete installation. Hopefully by April or May, we'll do startup. We did submit our engineering report in this month with DWP, which is for our permit, and we have to get our permit approved before we can actually start spreading at the spreading grounds. So this is very tentative, but once we install and start up the ozone system, we probably won't be able to actually spread water at Hanson Spreading Grounds until the end of this year, provided we get the permit. And then this is the initial phase of the groundwater replenishment project. So the second phase is an advanced water purification facility at DCT, and that facility will be constructed by 2025. So we've already issued a request for qualifications where the state, and we reopened that in December. So the statement of qualifications are due March 4th. Once we finalize the selection of a pre-qualified list, we will issue an RFP to those pre-qualified teams, and then we would hopefully award the contract before the end of this year, which would start a progressive design build for the overall advanced water purification facility to begin design phase.
Thank you for that summary. I thought that was incredibly helpful. You shared it in our briefing, and just thank Sanitation and DWP for working on this and getting us closer to our goals around sustainability.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Thank you, Commissioner Caloza. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President. Question, Ms. Munoz. You talked about the advanced purification project system that will be built. Don't we currently have something, I don't know if it's a smaller scale or just a pilot program, don't we have something already constructed at the Tillman plant? I'm just trying to clarify if there's something different.
Okay, so we had a pilot that it was an ozone, it was a pilot to evaluate several different treatment trains, which basically focused on what's known as the full advanced treatment train, which is microfiltration followed by reverse osmosis and then advanced oxidation processes, side-by-side comparison with an alternative advanced treatment train, which includes ozone followed by biologically activated carbon, which is basically a biofilter. So we do still run our pilot, which is an ozone BAC, biologically activated carbon filter, and we also have soil columns on site, 6 of them, that we use to feed the water to simulate the soil aquifer treatment that will be experienced through the ground at Hanson Spreading Grounds. And there is an AWPF already that Sanitation has at Terminal Island.
So with that pilot construction that we have there currently doing this work will be expanded, or will be a whole new one?
The ozone demonstration project is a completely new addition or stage of treatment to the phase 2 side of the plant.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited about this project and look forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. That sounded like a motion from you. All right, I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Any issue sending number 4 forthwith? We'll send number 4 forthwith. Agenda item number 5, requested tree removal, 5500 Sunset Boulevard in Council District 13. Recommending that the board find under the California Public Resources Code Section 21166 and the state CEQA Guidelines Section 15162 on the basis of substantial evidence contained in the whole record that since the city's prior certification of the Environmental Impact Report, that's the EIR, there have been no changes to the project, changes with respect to the circumstances under which the project is being undertaken, or new information of substantial importance concerning the project which cause new significant environmental effects or a substantial increase in the severity of previously identified significant effects, and therefore no subsequent EIR, supplemental EIR, or other analysis is required for the project. To specify that Streets LA Urban Forestry Division, located at 1149 South Broadway, is the custodian of the documents or other material that constitute the record of the proceedings upon which the board's decision is based. And third, approve the request for a fee tree removal permit to remove 8 street trees, which include 2 New Zealand Christmas trees, 3 Indian laurel fig trees, those are ficus trees, 1 yew, that's Y-E-W, pine tree, 1 Mexican fan palm tree, and 1 Canary Island date palm tree. Tree replacements are required. Mr. Sachs on number 5.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. So I'm thinking that this is 5500 Sunset Boulevard. This is going to be a new apartment complex that's going to be built. You know, the city actually ought to consider a moratorium on building high-rises for a couple of years. And while they're considering that, maybe the state of California could update and upgrade its Environmental Quality Act guidelines and its Public Resources Code that will better reflect on the 21st century. There's a lot of things that are going on in the city and the state that rely on codes that haven't been upgraded or updated, I don't know, since the 20th century, which is 20 years ago, but still, there's a lot more development going on now in the city than there ever was before. Even when they had redevelopment, there wasn't as much development going on. With redevelopment, there wasn't as much development going on. Now that there's no redevelopment, there's tons of redevelopment going on. And redevelopment, there should be more thought into reusing, recycling buildings, renovating buildings, and using them instead of tearing them down, creating more mass for landfills, and creating a bigger environmental impact than if you recondition a building and you renovate the building, and you could use that for people who live in homes that are facing REAP. There's a lot of things to be looked at if you use your resources a little bit differently than just focusing on the dollar bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Banuelos?
Hey, good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, City Attorney, Dr. Campos, Hector Banuelos with the Bureau of Streets LA Urban Forestry Division. I'm here before the board to request approval of a tree removal permit for 8 trees or on behalf of the Target Corporation. They're currently constructing a 3-story, 195,000 square foot multi-tenant commercial structure. This is at 5500 West Sunset Boulevard. The project is a very large one. It has some history behind it.
It's the old Target, right?
It's the old Target,
That
yes.
got stalled legally?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the one, correct. And so the project is bounded by St. Andrews, Western Avenue, and DeLongpre Streets. They're in the Council District 13. As part of the condition to build, the developers are required to perform a couple of off-site traffic mitigation measures, the street improvements. These required improvements are going to severely impact 8 street trees. 6 trees are going to be impacted by a required street widening on Western Avenue at Sunset Boulevard, where the developer is required to widen the roadway from 30 feet to 35 feet to accommodate a right turn lane onto Sunset Boulevard from Western. The 6 trees are going to be severely impacted and require removal at this location. Another off-site roadway improvement is at the T intersection of Western Avenue and DeLongpre, where the developer is required to install a new crosswalk, and with that crosswalk, they're going to be required to install a new traffic control device and relocate an existing street light, and also do some improvements on the damaged curb and gutter and sidewalks. With that, they're going to severely impact 2 Indian laurel fig trees, 2 large ones. The Streets LA looked into and met and discussed this project on a couple of occasions with the developer and the applicant, and trying to retain some of these trees. However, due to their location and the required street improvements, it's just not feasible to try to retain the trees, and therefore they have to be removed. If approved, the applicant shall plant 17 36-inch box-sized trees and 6 Mexican fan palms to replace the trees.
Thank you. So, Hector, this has been around a while. It's a bit, I just drove by it yesterday, actually, coincidentally, reminded of the eyesore that it is, but you can also see, though, there's more activity now that's starting to develop. I guess some of the legal restrictions have been removed. So now they're starting to build on this project, and this request is based upon the building requirements that have been in existence for some time from engineering, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And has your office received any type of organized opposition at all? I know the community's actually wanted to get rid of the eyesore, so they want the store built.
Yeah, our tree removal notification system, I did note that there were a couple of inquiries on it, although I'm not sure if they're in opposition or in support of the project.
Okay, so nothing more than the inquiries.
Nothing more than the inquiries, and at least as far as I know.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
Wanted to ask if we've got the support of Council District 13. Is this the 13th district?
We have not received any notice from the council office that they're in opposition of the project. The applicant did tell me that, though, the council office is in support of the project and just wants to see this project completed. It's been going on for so many years.
All right, thank you. Then I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 5, seconded by Commissioners Davis and Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 5. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 5 forthwith? We'll send number 5 forthwith. Agenda item number 6, Council Districts 1, 4, 5, 10, 11, 13, and 14, a contract acceptance for surface transportation program. It's local bike safe granting replacement project. It's a federal project, and the federal project number is listed. Recommending that the board first accept the contract. Second, assess Peterson Chase Engineering Incorporated with a penalty in the amount of $92,235.77 for the unauthorized subcontractor substitution of one bid listed disabled business enterprise subcontractor. That's the DBE process from the federal contracts. Third, instruct the director of the Office of Accounting to disencumber the recommended city penalty in the amount of $28,046.75 from the project fund, and then go collect the remaining $64,189.02. Mr. Sachs, on number 6. Mr. Sachs, you have a card on number 6. Everyone's waiting. Dr. Campos, did we receive any other speaker cards on number 6?
No, we have not.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Item number 6, bike safe grading replacement. It's a federal project. A federal project for bike lanes. How does that work? I mean, doesn't the city and metro and the county get grants from the government to do this kind of work? Wasn't this something that was done with the gas tax that was increased so they could do road safety work? We have Measure M, we have Measure R, we have other grants from the state and the county. That the federal project, it's a federal project in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 districts. Why can't they use district funds? Why don't they use bus bench revenue funds for the bike lanes? Why don't they use, I don't know, AB 1290 funds for the bike lanes? It's, again, the situation where you have these resources that are being abused. Fraud, waste, and abuse. We hear that a lot in city and county government, and even metro, fraud, waste, and abuse. And who's the biggest fraud, waste, and abusers? The government. Duh. And the government, unfortunately, the people who do this abusing abuse the people that pay the government to do the work. It's a vicious, it's not a vicious circle anymore. It's a vicious spiral, and it should change. It should change. Some people need to step up and say, you know what? As elected officials, we need to do the right thing. The right thing. That was a movie, wasn't it? Spike Lee, The Right Thing.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Ms. McGlinchey. Good morning.
Good morning, Linda McGlinchey, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Ms. McGlinchey, before you start, was this item continued from before?
No, it was not.
Okay. Has the contractor here, Peterson, they got notice of today's hearing, correct?
Yes, they did. I know the board report states that they would attend. However, I spoke with them on Friday, explained the whole federal funding issue, and they have decided not to
Okay.
contest the recommendation.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, and just as a matter of clarification, I know the agenda refers to it as a disabled business enterprise. That should be a disadvantage.
Disadvantaged, yes.
So, as stated, we are recommending a penalty be assessed Peterson Chase. The reason is this is a federally funded project. In order to be eligible for award, they had pledged to utilize GNC Equipment Corporation for a total of $425,954. GNC was supposed to furnish frames and grates for this project. At the completion of the project, staff confirmed that GNC had only furnished $227,698.28 worth of frames and grates. We notified the contractor. The contractor explained that while the schedule of work and prices stated frames and grates for all of the locations, the plans and the actual plans for the project indicated that frames were not needed for every location. After award, they worked with the Bureau of Engineering closely, and it was determined that frames were not needed in several locations, and they stated that that was the reason for the underutilization. However, when staff worked with the engineering to review the deduct change orders pertaining to GNC's sub-bid, staff was only able to adjust or reduce their adjusted subcontract amount after the deduct change orders to $319,934.05. That left a difference of $92,235.77, which is our total recommended penalty. That is because the federal regulations clearly state that if money is intended for a DBE subcontractor, that money must go to the subcontractor unless it's deducted through a city-issued change order. The reason why we are only withholding $28,046.75 and requesting the collection of $64,189.02 is because the Public Contract Code only allows us to retain for retention 5% of the total value of the contract, and this was a relatively small contract. So that $28,000 is the total retention, and therefore we have to collect that remaining. Are there any questions?
So just to confirm really for the record, Ms. McGlinchey, the explanation to Peterson Chase is the rule that we've had to follow for certainly my entire time here when we have a federally funded project through which we have to seek and obtain reimbursement of those funds. If we stray from what is more of a stricter rule regarding penalties, we risk our ability to obtain reimbursement, correct?
That is correct. And furthermore, even if they had already paid us the money, they have every right to ask for it back.
Meaning the federal government?
Yes.
All right. So in prior years, as in today, we really haven't had discretion, not really, on dealing with penalties like this on these federal contracts. And is that what you had, in sum and substance, what you had described to the contractor?
Correct. Because if for some reason the board decided to use its discretion and not assess that full penalty, the city would have to figure out where that money would come from within the city.
Right. And So we've really never had discretion in these federal funded projects going forward. The reason I asked and wanted to be clear on the record is because of the way that the penalties had to be calculated and the value of the contract, it's a pretty steep penalty. And had the board had discretion, normally it's something that we would have worked on a little bit to find what might be a bit of an adjustment, but we don't really have that discretion here without jeopardizing funding on the whole contract, and that's not fair to the local taxpayer on that. So thank you for the explanation. Commissioner Caloza.
Thank you, President James. Thanks for the additional information, Linda, on this. I just wanted to clarify a few things. When you spoke to the contractor on Friday, are you under the impression that we're going to be able to collect these additional funds from them?
Yes, the contractor actually asked how they would be billed for that $64,000. I had expressed to him to expect some sort of notice from the board office accounting.
Okay, well that's positive. I also just wanted to clarify as well that there is also, some process issue here from our end too that shouldn't have happened, that I want to make sure we correct in the future in terms of them being paid for work and materials that weren't used that we should have found out about a lot sooner, right?
It would have been difficult for us to have found that out sooner, just because of we didn't know that there was a shortfall until the end and all the change orders were calculated. And the public contract code does not allow us to withhold more than 5% of the total contract from the start.
Okay. And then just for my understanding, and I think you mentioned this too on Friday, but it might be helpful for others to know, has this happened before, and what was the board's action in a similar situation?
In terms of where we had to ask for money back, it has happened before, not many times, but it has happened before. And yes, the board, just as I had told the contractor, would direct Office of Accounting to seek the reimbursement from the contractor.
Okay. Thank you for adding that additional context. I don't have any additional questions. I think that's great news that the contractor is being incredibly helpful in this case in terms of the collection of these additional funds. So thank you for talking to him on Friday.
Thank you, Commissioner Closer. Commissioner Davis.
Mrs. McGlinchey, just for the record, the funds that we are seeking, the remaining $64,000, obviously we're going to encumber some approximately $28,000 from the existing funds we have. But when we look at the monies that we are seeking to recoup from the contractor, these are monies that were given and utilized by the unauthorized subcontractor. Is that correct? The $92,000 collectively?
The $92,000 that we're looking to collect were funds that had been intended for the DBE subcontractor, but they did not receive.
Correct. That's what I wanted to be sure about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Anything further? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 6, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 6. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 6 forthwith? We will send number 6 forthwith. Let's take our meeting minutes. Dr. Campos, today we've got the meeting of Friday, February 14th, correct? That's what I've got in front of me. Is there a second to my motion that we adopt those meeting minutes by Commissioner Garcia? Any objection? Without objection, we will approve those meeting minutes. We have a supplemental agenda item this morning. It's agenda item number 8. It's a hearing, a continued hearing. We've had a number of hearings already on this item. I don't know how many, 4 or 5 perhaps. Ms. Blyther maybe can summarize that for us. Agenda item number 8, hearing ordinance number 181075, termination of franchise agreement for O'Donnell Oil. There are, I'm going to read through the items. There are 7 items. One of them was waived by O'Donnell's representative who's here. The first 5, or the first 4 of them, I'm sorry, 4 out of the first 5 were adopted, and then we've got numbers 4 and 6 to deal with. So let me read through the ones that were previously adopted. Recommending that the board, and these were adopted at the last hearing, recommending that the board first find that O'Donnell Oil LLC submitted a request to abandon its franchise ordinance number 181075 pursuant to section 4.7 of ordinance number 181075. That was previously adopted. Second, find that the abandonment plan submitted by O'Donnell Oil LLC does not meet the city requirements. That was previously adopted. Third, instruct O'Donnell Oil LLC to submit an abandonment plan which complies with the city and office of the state fire marshal's requirements. That was previously adopted. Fourth, authorize the petroleum administrator to impose a $25,000 fine for ongoing failure to provide insurance at the level required by the risk management division of the chief administrative officer. That was not previously adopted. Number 5, find O'Donnell Oil LLC in continuing violation of section 5.2, the insurance requirements of ordinance 181075. That was previously adopted. Number 6, instruct the petroleum administrator to issue a $25,000 fine for O'Donnell Oil LLC's failure to obtain or provide evidence of $25 million in sudden and gradual pollution liability insurance. That was not yet adopted and continued to today. The last one was previously adopted but was waived. It was the order requested the Board of Public Works Executive Officer to provide written notification to O'Donnell Oil of the board's action. But that was waived. The representative was here. So we're dealing with 2 items today. Number 4, authorize the petroleum administrator to impose a $25,000 fine for ongoing failure to provide insurance at the level required by the risk management division of the CAO. And number 6, instruct the petroleum administrator to issue a $25,000 fine for O'Donnell Oil LLC's failure to obtain or provide evidence of $25 million in sudden and gradual pollution liability insurance. On number 8, Mr. Sachs. All right, Mr. Sachs passes number 8, which is good because I didn't have a card for you anyway. Ms. Blyther on number 8.
Good morning, Commissioners and Department Representatives. I'm Erica Blyther, the Acting Petroleum Administrator, and I'm providing some background context for this item. On June 8th of 2017, the City of Los Angeles renewed its pipeline franchise ordinance for 181075 with O'Donnell Oil LLC, and the ordinance became effective on July 17th, 2017. And the renewal contained the standard provision for city contracts, including Section 5.2 of the franchise ordinance, which requires the franchisee to obtain, at its own cost, workers' compensation coverage, comprehensive general liability coverage, including contractual liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, automobile liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, and pollution liability insurance covering sudden and gradual events in the amount of $25 million. Section 5.2 also requires that a franchisee shall file evidence of insurance policy with and approved by the City Administrative Officer Risk Management Office. So we've gone through a long process, and we have about 42 franchisees back in April of 2018 that were not compliant. At this point, there are now 40 franchisees, and 38 or 95% are in compliance with these insurance requirements. This is one of the few that is not. On March 11th of 2019, going back, I guess you mentioned how many board meetings we've had. This will actually be the 10th board meeting we've had on this topic. So
The 10th board meeting on this topic?
Yeah, so a number
Now, they
of
fine would barely even pay for the time the cities worked on this, but go ahead.
So, but on March 11th of 2019, the board found that O'Donnell was required to provide evidence of insurance of $10 million general liability, $1 million automobile, and $25 million in sudden and gradual coverage. So O'Donnell has challenged this and asserted lack of notice at the October 26, 2018 meeting and the February 25th, 2019 board hearings. So the board addressed O'Donnell's responsibility for the new insurance levels at a hearing on March 11, 2019. And this was where they found the evidence of insurance was not there. O'Donnell has submitted abandonment plans, but they are not, neither of the abandonment plans has been acceptable. O'Donnell said they would remove 150 feet of 2-inch pipeline from the public right-of-way, leaving 1,200 feet in place, which were to be capped, but more than capping is required. Section 4.7 of the ordinance requires that the lines be purged, cleaned, sectionalized, and capped, or abandoned to any other manner that the Board of Public Works prescribed, and they don't meet the city's abandonment criteria and therefore both unacceptable. They also do not address street damage restoration or the types of permits to be obtained, and other things including inspection, recompaction, hazardous waste, and other items were not addressed. O'Donnell has yet to comply with the compliance for the insurance, and the ordinance requires a guarantee even while going through abandonment to carry the proper insurance and bonding through the final abandonment. So the abandonment has not begun, and they still do not have the proper insurance. At the November 25th meeting, the board allowed a 90-day continuance for the abandonment plan. As of mid-February, no revised abandonment plan has been submitted. I believe you all have a copy of a letter from O'Donnell, and it contains the latest risk and management quick compliant printout, which shows that the November 11th was the latest insurance filed, and it still does not show the $25 million sudden and gradual pollution. And again, this fine, we're requesting this fine because it's for public safety, and so it's sudden and gradual pollution prevention. So sudden is if there's something like an earthquake or a fault that causes the pipeline to burst, and gradual if there's a slow insidious leak. And these are the few tools that we have to ensure compliance and to protect the citizens of Los Angeles. And I mentioned this is the 10th board meeting. There was one on October 26th of 2018, February 25th of 2019, March 11th of 2019, April 26th of 2019, June 24th of 2019, and some of these were continued, some were actual appearances. June 26th of 2019, July 12th of 2019, August 21st of 2019, November 25th of 2019, the last one, and today would be the 10th of February 24th of 2019. As you mentioned, representatives from O'Donnell are here.
Ms. Blyther, thank you for the summary. A couple of questions. The issue that we've got in front of us today regarding the imposition of the $25,000 fine for failure to obtain the required insurance that's referenced there, has your office received any indication of the acquisition of that insurance?
No.
Okay. During a prior hearing, we've and by the way, congratulations to your office and of the 95% compliance of the entities that we're working with in this area. And it's this 5% that's taken up all of this time on the city's workload, including this 10th hearing. In the past, we have been willing, which we were here, to provide additional time for the entity to find and acquire the insurance that's mandated by the city. We acknowledged in those prior hearings that it makes more sense, if possible, with a reasonable continuance, to allow them to spend the money on getting the insurance rather than paying the fine. But this now is well over a year in process. In November, the issue was available about not moving on the fine to allow them to acquire the insurance, correct?
Yes.
All right. And
well, it was actually to get the abandonment plan in place as well as provide the insurance.
Right, right. And you don't have either one, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. My recommendation would be to impose the fine. Mr. Coffey, you are back today. We've had a number of hearings on this already. Let's see what you can provide in 3 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. James, and I thank you to the board for taking the time to hear me. Just a point of clarification, many of those dates of meetings that were mentioned were dates that were set but then continued. So there hasn't been 10 meetings that have been involved since October. I think it's more like 5.
Tell you what, we'll make it 5.
Okay. So I wanted to point out a couple.
But the time doesn't change from point A to point B.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, as indicated in the letter I sent in last week, we have been trying to find insurance. We did get the most recent quote, which is the best we could get, looking around for weeks and months to try to find this, and the annual premium is over $144,000 for the 25 million sudden and gradual, which we can't afford. We've been trying to find it. We've been trying to get it at a cost we could afford, and we just haven't been able to do it. My client hasn't been able to do it. They've made a diligent effort to do it through no fault of their own. They're in a situation now where they can't obtain the 25 million sudden and gradual, which was a dramatic increase in costs to them, and they simply can't afford it. They're a small, literally mom and pop operation. So we're sort of at the mercy of the board here. We can't afford the insurance that has been imposed, which was imposed several months ago, that requirement. We've been trying to get it, we can't get it. So we've been fined once already, $10,000. We paid that fine promptly and timely. We now have a consultant that we have retained, the company has retained, to complete the abandonment plan. Have been in contact with the city about that, with the Department of Office of Petroleum Natural Gas Services, have asked who should we be dealing with our consultant, waiting to hear back on that so we can implement all those things we needed to get the plan done. In the meantime, we were trying desperately to try to put some insurance in place that could fend off this issue with respect to the fining, because all the resources that we have, we really needed to devote to putting together an abandonment plan. So we are where we are. We've been making good faith efforts to get here, and we just haven't been able to get the insurance. And I can report to you the last quote, the premium quote we got as of Friday was $144,387.50. That's the annual premium. We can't do it. And so, again, we're only in this situation because of this increased insurance requirement. It's through no fault of our own. We're making our best efforts to try to just get this thing done. I would again urge the board, I think it makes more sense to allow us to devote the resources to get the plan done and work with the city to get that done rather than continue to be fined. And I would urge the board to accept that. I would also point out this was added as a supplemental agenda item. So the basis for the fine, and I pointed this out at the last meeting in November, and the report that's been submitted in support of the fine is identical to what was submitted back in November. There's been no new information included in it, and it just frankly is not accurate. It has information in there to justify a fine, that there were 3 notices of violation. That's not true. There were not. There were only 2. It had a basis for a fine that we were not compliant with the other aspects of liability, the $10 million. That is also not correct. We have been and are in compliance with that element. And finally, it was based on the fact that we hadn't purportedly paid the $10,000 fine in a timely manner, when in fact we had paid it. So the factual premises of the $25,000 fine, as we pointed out in November, are incorrect, and we don't believe there's a justification on that ground, and nothing has been done to correct any of those items because the identical information that was being relied upon to recommend this fine to the board back in November is set forth in what is described as the supplemental agenda item with respect to this fine. Having said that, I just go back again, from a good faith, reasonable standpoint, the only reason my client is in this dilemma is because there was the adoption of the sudden gradual $25 million, which is an excessively costly premium that we can't afford.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Ms. Blyther. We've had, you said you got 95% compliance. The size of the entities that we're working with, we're dealing with small, medium, and large across the board?
Yeah, across the board. So some are very small, some are larger. Some opt to do self-insurance, which is what some of the carriers have done, franchisees have done. So there are many options, and we have made efforts to connect them with our risk management, and they can share this information. All of this information is publicly available, who can choose which type of insurance carriers as well.
And that's been available to all of the entities the entire time we've been going through this process with them?
Yes.
For them to obtain insurance coverage, correct?
That's correct.
All right. My concern here, and I know we have a couple people that want to ask questions, But I think we have to strike a balance. And when was the first hearing we had on this?
The first hearing was in October of 2018.
Okay. October of 2018.
Yes.
So we're at 15 or 16 months. Okay. Whether it's 5 or 10, we'll go with 5. It's still 15 or 16 months. And I remember the discussion that we had in November. We obviously, from the record, specifically avoided the fine issue, gave them 90 more days, and we're back at the same argument, exactly the same argument that we had then. At some point, we have to consider the public safety in balance with the accommodations that we provided to this business. And as far as I'm concerned, their time has run out. But I realize others may feel differently. So we've got some folks with questions. Commissioner Davis.
I had a question for Mr. Coffey.
Mr. Coffey.
We've talked about the gap here in terms of time. But what I'm interested in is to find out what the goal was from you and your client in terms of getting the insurance. It's been shared that information has been made available to the city, from the city, to yourself and your client in terms of some alternatives that might be available, including self-insurance. What was the idea of the goal that you had in mind in terms of this task of getting insurance?
The idea was to try to find something my client could afford, and there was nothing provided by the city that gave us any alternative that would have worked. Self-insurance would require us to have a huge amount of assets for a $25 million policy that my client simply doesn't have. Larger companies obviously can self-insure. That was not an option here. So then it became trying to work with people in the industry, work through various insurance brokers, try to find the most affordable and best option we could find. And the best we've been able to do is the $144,000 premium. That's the best we've been able to do. Believe me, if we could have found something affordable, we would have. That was the goal, and we haven't been able to get it done. It has not been easy, and it wasn't easy, and we haven't been able to do it. So that's all I can tell you. It hasn't been for lack of trying.
Commissioner Closa.
Thank you, President James. I have one question for you, Mr. Coffey. So you mentioned that this was, a new addition that we had when we adopted the policy, this sudden and gradual insurance pollution. Previously, did you have any similar type of coverage in your insurance?
No, thank you for your question. We did not, because what we had was required under our original franchise agreement, which specifically is spelled out in the contract at that level. I believe it was a $5 million liability, if I'm recalling correctly. So we had whatever was required at that time, and we had that coverage in place when the new requirement came into being. We did comply with one element of it, which is the $10 million general liability. The issue has been this $25 million sudden and gradual. That's been the difficult one to obtain. And so throughout this whole process, we have maintained all of the insurance except for that $25 million. And that requirement actually did not go into effect with respect to O'Donnell until June of last year. It hasn't been 18 months. There was some notice issues with regard to how the requirement was rolled out and done under the franchise agreement. So actually, the requirement did not kick in for O'Donnell until June of last year. It hasn't been 18 months. And that's clear from the record, which I can go through it. But so the bottom line is, we didn't have this coverage before. We weren't required to have the coverage. We've always had the coverage that we're required to have up until this $25 million sudden and gradual requirement.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. And then just one last question for me, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Blyther a few questions. Did your client continue to make revenue in the past 16 months while you were not meeting requirements of the city's new insurance plan?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Blyther? Just give me 1 second here. Relative to our other franchisees, does O'Donnell fall into a small, medium, or large size company compared to the others?
I'd say small to medium.
Small to medium.
But there are a number of small to medium franchisees that we have.
Okay. But they're not the smallest.
I would say they're not the smallest.
Okay. And so back to your earlier point, there's only 2 left that are non-compliant.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit to some of the notice issues that Mr. Coffey brought up? I know in a few of our prior hearings, there was some suggested recommendations of doing certified mail and potentially other ways to verify that these notifications are going out, that we can have further proof that they actually reach the intended recipient.
I think that was actually with the other franchisee. Okay. They have been consistent with showing up at these meetings. So O'Donnell appeared actually at the October meeting. They appeared at the February 25th meeting in 2019. They appeared, and they also appeared. Excuse me, I'm looking at my notes. They've been pretty consistent in appearing, so I believe they've been getting written notices. But yes, we have made every effort to send things in writing as well as certified mail, emails, etc.
Okay.
I would like to respond to that if I could. At the beginning of this process, we had counsel, Mr. Coffey appeared and made an argument that our notice still wasn't sufficient even though he appeared. And it was a statutory notification type argument. So I wanted to avoid having that argument exist anyway. So we just kicked it, the first continuance out beyond, I think it was the 90-day issue back then, just to eliminate that argument from being made. And when he came back the next time, he still stuck to the argument. I used this term then, I use it again today. I felt a bit gamed, and I don't say that often from here, but I felt a bit gamed by counsel on that process. It is what it is. It's a notification issue that is not relevant to the decision that we're making today, but since the question was on the table, I wanted to respond to it, since I was part of that record.
Thank you, President James. Thank you, Ms. Breitler. I don't think I have any additional questions, but would agree with President James's recommendation about assessing this penalty. I think it was Dr. Williams who made the point one of the past hearings that, if he didn't have insurance and he was driving his car, he could get pulled over and also get cited for not having the requirements for operating that vehicle. I think for fairness and giving all the circumstances laid out here, especially with the time extensions, I would agree with President James.
Thank you, Commissioner Colosa. Commissioner Garcia?
Yeah, and thank you, President James. Maybe you answered this already, but just for the context of the situation, why is it that the rest of the 38 franchises were successful obtaining this insurance and this one has not, in your experience?
I believe everyone else felt the need to comply. I can't speak exactly, but we all guided them to insurance. There was a meeting in October and several franchisees came in. And I believe there were, 6 who were liable for getting fines. And then at that day, I believe there were 3 or 4 who got insurance prior to the meeting, and they were just X'd out of the record because they considered having insurance as a priority for them. And so they obtained that insurance right before the meeting. They were able to speak to that, and then they were not issued fines. So I just believe it was an issue of making a priority for the businesses.
And we were able to share that information of the successful folks that were able to get insurance. We were able to share that with this franchise as well, right?
Yes, so we've made that very publicly available. So we've had constant communication. They've spoken with Tamara Martin in my office, and we've pointed them to Quick Comply, which is publicly available. Anyone with the internet access can look at that and see if you want to look up a company, you can type in that company's name and see what their insurance requirements are and how they're meeting that. So it's very publicly available.
Is there a difference of the franchise and the work that they do of the other ones, the 38 other ones, and this one? Is there a difference, or they're pretty much aligned the same?
So there are a number of different commodities that are carried by our franchisees. We have about 40 franchisees, and some carry chilled water, some carry oil. This is an oil pipeline, and there are several other oil pipelines that also have obtained insurance.
Got it, understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas. I'm sorry, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Villegas.
Thank you, President James. I have just a couple of questions for Mr. Coffey. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've made an argument saying that the insurance requirement is exceeding the levels for this business, for the O'Donnell franchise, and they cannot afford this new requirement. I just want to have for the record, if there's no insurance and if a fine is placed, what happens next?
Well, what happens next is, and we've been in communication with the city about this, we've retained a consultant and are working on an abandonment plan. We've invited the city or their office to let us know who the point of contact person should be. We're waiting to get that information. So that's what's happening next. We just have to go through that.
Even if you go through the process of a consultant, that'll give the franchise some more information to be able to hopefully guide you, right, to be able to get the proper requirements. I'm concerned just about the operations still going to take place. What if we're still going to be operating with no insurance and now having a penalty on top of that?
Well, I mean, we do have insurance.
I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But no,
the additional $25 million. Yeah.
No, the goal would be to work as quickly as possible to put an abandonment plan in place that can be accepted by the city.
Okay.
And we've been in the process of doing that and also trying to get the insurance at the same time. So,
okay.
Just haven't had the luck.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the agenda items number 8, subsections 4 and 6, the two remaining. That's to authorize the petroleum administrator to impose the fine of $25,000 and then to instruct the petroleum administrator to issue the fine of $25,000. Is there a second on it? By Commissioners Davis and Caloza. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 8, sub 4 and 6. Any issue sending it forthwith? All right, we'll send it forthwith. Thank you, everyone, for all the work on this.
President James, could I just also ask for written notice of this specific ruling today?
Mr. Jordan?
Yes, I think that could be provided by the board office.
Okay.
The petroleum
There's your answer.
office.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Agenda item, and that's noted, Dr. Campos. Agenda item number 7. That's all that's left on the desk this morning, correct, Dr. Campos?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Agenda item number 7, Council District number 4, requested revocable permit encroachment in the public right-of-way, retaining walls, concrete steps, and patios, 6830 West Pacific View Drive. Recommending that the board, there are 4 things, and number 4 has got a subsection. This was continued from exactly, well, about 4 weeks ago, January 24th to February 24th, for additional information from engineering. Recommending that the board first deny the subject request for revocable permission to encroach into the public way. Second, require that the applicant obtain a construction A permit to remove encroachments from the public way. Third, transmit a copy of the report to Mr. Adam Storer, property owner, 6830 West Pacific View Drive, Los Angeles, 90068. And number 4, transmit a copy of the report to the following departments and bureaus. First, Department of Building and Safety at 201 North Figueroa. Second, Engineering, the Valley District Office at Van Nuys Boulevard. Third, Streets LA, Street Services at 1149 South Broadway. And fourth, Water and Power at 111 South Hope Street. Mr. Sachs, you have a card in on number 7. Actually, tell you what, Mr. Sachs, Mr. Tanageri, let's start with you. We'll go to the speakers in a moment while Mr. Sachs collects his things. And let me mention, this is the second hearing. We had a hearing on January 24th that was fairly extensive in and of itself. It resulted in the additional information that we've asked for from engineering, so you can provide a summary of why we're here and then an update on the information that you've obtained, then we'll go to our speakers. It's now exactly 11:29. We need to wrap this morning at 12:30, so that'll be this afternoon. So we've already had one long hearing on this, so we ought to be able to get through today's hearing in an hour or less. So that said, go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Wesley Tenageri, Bureau of Engineering, Valley District Office. As you mentioned, the original report was January 24th, 2020. It's a revocable permit request by the applicant at 6830 Pacific View Drive. There's existing encroachments in an unimproved public right-of-way of Valleyton Trail that was constructed, and in the public right-of-way. There was a notice given by the Bureau of Street Services in, I believe, 2008 for those encroachments to be removed. It has recently been brought back to the Bureau of Engineering from a complaint regarding the public right-of-way being blocked for access to a septic tank, to be able to maintain a septic tank at the property at 3009 Vista Crest Drive. Today, the original report will be amended to add the supplemental report along with the transmittals. The first during the meeting on the 24th, the board asked for some additional information. At that meeting, the applicant produced a document of an easement that was claimed that the encroachments were on their private property. The applicant provided that document to the Bureau of Engineering, and we determined that that document was a storm drain easement, which was on their property and not in the public right-of-way of Valleyton Trail. And that is shown on transmittal number 7. Transmittal number 8 is Valleyton Trail, which includes an aerial photograph. Bureau of Engineering staff outlined the encroachments of 6830 Pacific View Drive in orange, and there's also some encroachments from a neighbor at 6846 Pacific View that's outlined in green. Both of those encroachments are clearly within the Valleyton Trail right-of-way. Transmittal number 9 is a series of photographs from a Google Street View that is pointed towards Valleyton Trail from Pacific View Drive. And the dates are from July 2007 to March 2018. Those photos show a sort of history of what has gone on from those two dates. From the Google Street View, the only encroachments that you can really see are there's a gate, wrought iron gate, and pavers that belong to 6846 Pacific View Drive. That property owner is conditioned to remove those encroachments for approval of their certificate of occupancy of a new single-family dwelling that they have built.
And that's, what, did you say the name of that person?
No, I have not.
Okay, you just said the address.
The address.
Okay, so the address is, tell me again?
6846
Okay.
Pacific View.
And so you've got we got 3 property owners. Now we've got Mr. Sachs, not our Mr. Sachs, not Arnold Sachs, but a different Sachs. I believe it's Stephen Sachs.
Yes.
Then we've got the property owner at 6846 Pacific View Drive, which has that other easement that you're referencing. And then we have the stores, which are the applicants.
Correct.
Go ahead.
At the board's request, they requested information about the existing sewer main lines. Transmittal number 10 is a map of the existing sewer main lines, which there is one in Pacific View Drive, and there are no existing main lines in Valleyton Trail or Vista Crest Drive. The map also superimposed the existing building footprints in gray and that indicates that there's very little room between the house at 3009 Vista Crest Drive to the property lines. The property owner of 3009 Vista Crest previously stated that they utilized the unimproved public right-of-way of Valleyton Trail to maintain their septic tank prior to the installation of the encroachments. Lastly, transmittal number 11 is a survey that was used for the project at 6846 Pacific View Drive. This survey clearly outlines the encroachments, including the pavers and gate for 6846 highlighted in green, as well as the patio, walls, stairway encroachments from 6830 Pacific View Drive. Depending on the board's decision, the Bureau of Engineering is of course open to work with everyone to try and resolve the issues. I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Tanageri. So let's get some of these issues out on the table again through our speakers. But first, to alleviate the confusion between Stephen Sachs and Arnold Sachs, we're going to call on you, sir. And then we'll get to the folks that relate directly to the issue. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much, and I appreciate you calling me and differentiating between the two of us. He's probably taller than I am also. But the reason I put a card in on this is because of the process that's involved, and I was looking for a magazine article that I just picked up about the emoji film. And there was a film put on about the emoji, and I thought, you know, there was going to be a fight, and I suggested to somebody that the studio could sue, or somebody could sue, because the emoji item was created by somebody in like 1986 or 1996, and so there's like a time period that you can't just all of a sudden 30 years later say, oh, that's my item and I own, because somebody was suing somebody in Germany. There was a German company that was suing the studio for the use of the word emoji. And so I was thinking about, you know, if it was made in 1986, after 30 years, you can't go back and sue somebody that you claim to own it. It's kind of like the word right guard. Right guard is a deodorant, but it's also the position in the NFL on football teams. And I don't think it has a copyright to it, because if it had a copyright to it, then you couldn't have a right guard in football. You might have a right guard deodorant, but you couldn't have a right guard in football. So there's certain terms that you can't copyright. And the reason I bring that up is because I believe in the first hearing, there was a lot of information brought by, and again, I don't have a dog in the show or pony in the show, but there was information brought about that this easement was created in like the 1920s. So there's a time frame that's involved in here. I mean, you're looking at information from the last 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is, but if the easement is brought about in 1920, 25, 28, 29, whenever the property was first developed, there's a technical term for that where it becomes grandfathered in. That's the term.
Thank you, Arnold Sachs. All right. For the applicants, and ma'am, I'm going to use your first name again. I apologize. I always try to address Mr. and Ms. and what's appropriate, but I can get Nimalka. Would you tell me?
That's usually what I go by in court.
Would you tell me your last name?
Wikramasekara.
Okay.
Yes.
Wikramasekara.
But you can call us the Store.
Okay, Wikramasekara. Okay, I think I got it. And Mr. Store as well. Okay, so because of our, I want to get to everybody in the time that we have, since we've already had a hearing. Would you do your best to keep us to 6 minutes between the two of you? If you need more time, go ahead, as long as you're not repeating yourself, but that's a goal. And in that, you could just spend a couple of minutes summarizing what's happening. We were here for the first hearing. And then if you spend whatever time you need to address what the new information is in your request.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, and to the board.
So we received the report, the supplemental report, on Tuesday night, and I apologize for submitting 25 pages. It was a 7-page letter with, I think, 14 pages of photographs that we provided because our biggest concern about the supplemental report was, as we stated at the prior hearing, there is a lot of conflation of the different properties, Valleyton Trails 6846 and 6830. And the supplemental report exacerbated that by pointing to the wrong structures. And frankly, I had sent numerous emails to Mr. Tanagiri. I believe that I copied Dr. Campos too on those, inviting him to see the property because the issue is that the easements do appear to us to be from the 1920s. And in fact, some information that Mr. Tanagiri put in his report actually seemed to corroborate that. For example, Ms. Pinkerton at 3017 Vista Crest Drive, who also opposed our permit, she herself has encroachments in exactly the same orientation. And when my husband went up to take the photographs, because I had never actually crawled up the hill myself, I noticed that they're old stone walls. And we provided the pictures to show the commission that these are old stone walls. And there were two statements in Mr. Sachs's opposition to our permit that I wanted to address that, frankly, I don't know why, but we had not seen the actual original report until Friday, actually until minutes before we submitted the letter. So we hadn't seen the opposition statements. Two statements in the opposition letter from Mr. Sachs. One was that we had actually constructed the encroachments, which is 100% not true. The encroachments, as we told Mr. Tanagiri and the city, existed when we bought the property in 2009. My husband has the survey photos that we took. In addition, we've seen plans that were submitted to the city by the prior owner of our property before he began construction, showing the actual existence of the concrete patio, the curved concrete wall. All of that existed at least in 2007. And then because I think there's an issue with the notice, not all of our neighbors were notified. And not all of them were notified before the time period to submit a response. So our neighbor, Michael O'Donovan, is here. He moved there in 2005. His property sits directly opposite ours, so directly in front of the Vista Crest Trail. And Valleyton Trail, sorry. And he can date these walls back to 2005, so they're at least 15 years old. But the biggest concern we had was these are extensive structures and retaining walls, 10 feet, and they're only about 3 feet from my children's bedroom window. They're only about 1.5 to 2 feet from our back door, and our kitchen looks directly over it. These are not far from the actual existing house. The house actually sits on Valleyton Trail. And so our point in asking him to date the structures was to figure out, is this sound? Is this, from an engineering perspective, can you even remove these? I don't frankly even know how we could bring a truck onto the property to remove these existing concrete structures. And when we appeared before the hearing last time, I showed you a 1928 document that I had. My point is that's the only document I have that shows any right-of-way on any part of this land. And we asked Mr. Tanagiri to provide us with the documentation that I presume the city has that shows the actual ownership and what the right-of-way is. Is it a limited right-of-way? Because there was never a road there. And our neighbor can testify that there was never a road there, and it is, in fact, impassable. It drops from street level, Pacific View Drive, it drops about 1.5 stories into the easement. And the other thing is, Mr. Sachs, I think, provided some testimony that he accessed Valleyton Trail using a truck. There is no way anyone can drive a truck over what I showed you in the pictures. And that's the land that's the subject of the encroachment. This whole thing is about 6846 and not our property. And the other point, too, is I think the commission asked the question of whether he needs to access our property to get access to his septic tank. Since December 2009, he has never done that. And I think during the last hearing, he testified that he had to drain it every 6 months, and that the last time, and this is in his opposition letter, the last time he did was in 2015. I don't know how that's true, because between May and July of 2017, he rented it to a family of 4 who we were friendly with because they had children our kids' age. And my son has actually been in his house in 2017. And if he had to drain it every single time the septic tank was used, by 2017, that was already blocked. 6846 had already been developed. For 25 years, there was nothing between Mr. Sachs and the sewer on Pacific View Drive but an empty lot. And when we say he didn't do any self-help, my point is, for 30 years, he's been trying to get somebody else to pay for the sewer. He could have easily paid for an easement over that empty land, which Ms. Pinkerton owned for some time, and he could have built the sewer, but he didn't. And so now he's waited till both of us have developed property and is now asking to remove encroachments that have been there from what we can tell, for 100 years.
One question, you had indicated that it was about, you said this is all about 6846, and I've got a speaker card from the identified purchaser of 6846 that we'll call in a moment.
Yes.
But Mr. Tanagiri referenced 6846 as well, and I referred to it as that third property.
Yes.
When you say it's all about 6846, what do you mean?
What I mean is that it appears that Mr. Sachs, maybe once in 2015, drove a truck over 6846 when it was an empty lot and accessed his septic tank from that, along that. That is actually on the west of Valleyton Trail? East of it. I'm bad with my directions. It's not on Valleyton Trail. It's actually on private land. And he did it, this land was also owned by his neighbor. So he did access he may have accessed it in 2015 over that empty lot. But at no point did he do it over Valleyton Trail, the part that we've actually applied for.
And 6846 now is not an empty lot anymore.
It's not an empty lot. It was developed starting in 2015 by a builder, and they put up a beautiful home. And unfortunately, it's stuck empty because, from the last I heard, the city is trying to get that owner to spend $500,000 to build Mr. Sachs' sewer. And I don't understand how this is not an abuse of authority. And I don't understand how is this okay to be spending the city resources for it? For 100 years, the city determined that it wasn't going to develop Valleyton Trail, presumably because it's not possible to. We showed the photographs. And then for 30 years, since he owned the property, the city has still refused to build a sewer because it's not possible. Mr. Tanagiri's report, it seems to suggest you should disregard 100 years of determinations by the city regarding whether or not a sewer should be put on Valleyton Trail. There's no way to put one in there. So, and my husband has a little bit more information.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, sir. You're Mr. Storer, right? Adam Storer?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
go
President.
ahead.
Just a minute or two of your time. I appreciate that. When we first met with the city a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we received the citation, we tried to meet with the city. We went to their offices. We spoke with them on multiple times, trying to figure out a way to resolve the situation without coming to this. Every time we provided evidence, every time we provided an argument, they were dismissive, if that's the proper term, and told us to file a revocable permit where we could make our argument to the city, provide our materials to the city. Since then, which was over 1 year ago as of today, the city, aside from a couple of emails asking for follow-up documentations related to that permit, has never been on our property, as far as we are aware, has never contacted us for any additional information, aside from a copy of the deed, has never taken photographs, as far as we're aware of being there, and has not communicated with us and or sat down and had a meeting with us to make our argument. Based on my experience of 12 plus years as an investigator with the FBI, we are taught that investigation needs to not only be thorough and complete, but also unbiased and also factually accurate. We don't feel that what has been presented to the board through the first and the second supplemental have been factually accurate, as is evidenced by the documents that my wife and I have provided. And it's also the letter that was sent out in August of 2019 only asked for a response for those who opposed, not those that approved our permit. We have a handful of individuals today who you'll hear from who approve of us using the lot for multiple reasons, including our neighbors who have lived there. Again, like Mr. O'Donovan has lived there for 15 years. Also, in transmittal number 11 with Mr. Tanagiri reference, which is also number 14 of Exhibit A that we provided, figure 14 of Exhibit A, it clearly states that one of the people who has opposed has exactly the same type of building on that as what we have, and that is retaining walls, which show that whether or not due diligence was done, how can you oppose something where you have done exactly the same thing? It just, that doesn't make sense to us. And also it shows the need for the retaining walls in that area because her walls were starting to collapse. And I understand Mr. Sack's situation. I grew up on a farm, and I just confirmed with my father in the 65 years that he lived there, we never once had to pump a septic tank. And I'm not an expert on septic tanks.
I'm sorry, never once what?
Pumped a septic tank in the 65 years that he lived at our farmhouse.
Okay.
And I know I'm not an expert. I also worked a lot of construction. That's how I paid for college. And I know that the 4-inch pipe that's referenced in Mr. Tangeri's report that comes onto Volleyton Trail, I believe the housing code says that for a house, you have to have a minimum 3-inch, recommended 4-inch pipe if you have more than 2 toilets in the house. So the 4-inch pipe that goes on Volleyton Trail, I don't understand how that could be useful for a sewer line.
Thank you, sir. We'll take our neighbors, and then we'll go to questions after. We're going to hear from both sides, and we'll take questions. So I have 2 people listed as neighbors, Michael O'Donovan and Brian Pesaturo. So whoever wants to come up first, just let me know who I have.
Hey, folks. Good morning. My name is Michael O'Donovan. I live at 6841 Pacific View, which is right across the street from the stores and the new house at 6846. It's a 1920s house. It's up about 50 steps. I should be thinner, but it overlooks the new house, the stores, because they're set below a little bit, and I see across to the Vista Crest property that's the third of this triangle here. So since I have lived there since 2005, I have a 1923 garage that would not hold my Toyota Tacoma. So I've been parking, or had been parking, my Toyota Tacoma right up against what is now the store's wall. And you couldn't fit much more than that Tacoma in the space that was there. There are fruit trees, there are cactuses, and it's on a downward slope. So it surprised me to find out that there's even a street there. Point being is, if there were any wall movement or changes since 2005, I would have known. That's my parking spot. The walls that are there now are just cosmetically painted, or I'm not in construction either, or stuccoed, whatever. But there was never any movement of brick or structure since I've been there, to my knowledge. So the stores hadn't done anything, and if there's any marketing materials from when they bought the house, it should show that they haven't done anything. It remains today what it is. Yeah, and like I said, the Valentin Trail, it's not really accessible except by foot, and even if you're doing that, you're taking your hands and your life into your hands. You've got these big, oops.
2 minutes.
Did I go over?
You can go 30 seconds more.
Okay. Okay. Selfishly, I approve of what's there now. I could only imagine if that were opened up, that would open up the hills to my property value going down, even occupancy by homeless. You can see there's homeless all over the hills. If you look on Nextdoor app, there's crime coming in that would just allow squatters, and it would not do me any good selfishly. So I would like to say, I would like to see it as is, but I would like to see the house occupied, the new house, so that there's no squatters and my property value doesn't go down anymore. So I think I went over, but I think I hit everything.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pesaturo? It's Brian Pesaturo. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I live across the street from 6830 directly to the west, so I have a view of the new property up the street as well as directly across the street from the stores. I'm in strong support of the revocable permit in question here. You know, mirroring a lot of what Michael says, my main issues include safety hazard. I see the undoing as posing potential safety hazards. You know, that as a public way is so close to those those dwellings on either side. Again, the idea of homeless encampments, the idea of folks living outside of the neighborhood coming over and having the ability to park there and do whatever they like. Trespassing, I see it as a major issue. The fact that 6846 has been vacant for over 3 years doesn't do anyone any good in the neighborhood. The idea that that was developed and it's not inhabitable at the moment is a big problem for the neighborhood. And I would like to see someone be able to live in that home long term. As Michael mentioned, the idea of erosion, the idea of undoing anything happening there and the potential erosion in those hills is, I have to believe the risk is very high. We've seen many events, weather-related, in recent months with those hills just eroding, and the idea of undoing what's there provides no positive benefit to the community. And again, property values, not only myself, but I think everyone in that neighborhood would be negatively impacted by the idea of making that a public way with no real public use possibilities based on the terrain and based on what that situation is. So I strongly support, as a resident of that community, the application for the revocable permit. I just feel they're doing, we have good community members on both sides doing good things with their properties, and
2 minutes.
undoing that would not present any value to the neighborhood.
All right, thank you. I've got so what I'm trying to do is, we've heard from, I think, from the side of the applicant with one confusing question here regarding a speaker card. It looks like I've got Shane Scott, purchaser for 6846. And is that correct? Are you Mr. Scott? Are you in support of the granting of the revocable permit or of the denial of the revocable permit? The granting of the revocable permit. Okay, so then I want to have you speak before the opposition. So if you would come forward, sir.
Good morning, afternoon, board, distinguished board, and chairman. My name is Shane Scott, and I am currently the buyer under contract with the builder, Edward Cohen, who is present today. I am in strong support of this revocable permit being issued, not only because of the stability of the hillside would be compromised by taking out these walls. I live above them, and it would be a great detriment. Not only did it provides security to the hillside, as you've been hearing testimony before, when it was open, transients would come, and paraphernalia and whatnot was there, and they had to worry about crime, not me, but I read about it. Recently, someone had tried to attempt to get into the gate, but right now is providing, a security. And so obviously the hearing today is about their permit being hopefully reversed and in favor or support of it. It would be just insane to destroy all of that. It's a beautiful property. The builder, a beautiful home that I fell in love with. My dog fell in love with, that I just adopted. They have 2 dogs, and they're just like, they're inseparable, these 3 dogs. And to separate them would be a tragedy. I kind of bought the house for that alone. But sorry for getting emotional, because I have been, I can't even imagine the stress that this has caused the builder. For 3 years, they put a hold on our certificate of occupancy in lieu of this dedication, all imposed solely on the testimony that was given by Mr. Sachs in 2015. And it was false testimony. And it stipulated, or states in our grant, that he stood up and said that the builder was blocking his only access to his septic tank. And that is not the case. He can go right through his own front yard.
2 minutes.
Go ahead, continue.
Sorry, I'll try to speed up.
I should have been more clear. I consider you, your property is affected directly by this, but so just go ahead 1 more minute.
Yes, directly, because, as I said, the certificate of occupancy is being placed on hold, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. I entered into my agreement last July, and I was letting Mr. Cohen try to get the certificate completed, it was all based on this dedication. And Sean Yepperman in the City of Public Works is not releasing the hold because apparently we encroached in our own property the 8-foot setback. And when that was noted, and again, we've all heard that the survey didn't exist and they were going off maps and stuff. In fact, just last week, you know, and all credit to Mr. Tangieri, he borrowed our survey map for your report, page 1. And so I'm not clear where the property line is. I don't know if anybody is at this point, but what I am clear is that that hillside is stable, it's secure, it's beautiful. It's never been accessed by Mr. Sachs. It's impossible to get a truck on this trail. And the 2015 one occasion that the truck did get through there, that Namelka was referring to, was through my center lot. There's 3 lots that were vacant since 2007 until 2015 when Mr. Cohen started erecting the new structure. Just before that is when Mr. Sachs had gotten this truck, apparently. Now, it must be noted that a septic tank does not require pumping. It's recommended based on a schedule that you can find on Google once every 15 years, and that's if you need it pumped, because they have a seepage pit. So this testimony that he provided last hearing, which I was on the phone listening, I couldn't attend, I wasn't given notice, I wasn't aware, but I did attend over the phone. He stood up and said that the last time, to clarify Namelka, it was 5 years before he had it pumped, and then every 6 months thereafter before. It's just impossible. You don't clean septic tanks. And on this, according to the schedule, it's once every 15 to 20 years for a 3-bedroom house and 2 bathrooms, assuming it has 2 bathrooms. He testified that the seller didn't disclose why she didn't install a washer, if you can remember. And the first time he did laundry, he said he had a backfill. Well, septic tanks, if you know them, they stay afloat to the top. That's how it gets to the seepage pit. So they're supposed to be full, but you never empty them. And you rarely clean them. Some people say 50 years. The sediment might need to be cleaning. But he has never done it in 6 months. And I would ask the board to request his documentation to prove it, because this false testimony that he gave in 2015 caused the City of Public Works to impose this condition of this 8-foot dedication to regain access to a septic tank that he never had access to, that he can get through his own front yard today. It's only 90 feet from his property line to property line, so even less to the tank, if he needs to clean it. So this standing up and saying that we're blocking and impeding his access caused me and my builder much, much, much damage. I mean, he's been waiting 3 years to close on that house. We completed it in 2017. And we can't close escrow. I've had to extend my loan rate 3 times. $10,000 a month I'm paying for a house I can't even enjoy. It's unconscionable. This man harasses me. Of course I go there to maintain the property. Now they've killed the power because he's screaming, saying that someone's living there. No one is living there. My furniture was in there when I sold my house, but I'm not living there. I give you my word, I'm not living there. I go there to maintain, because Mr. Cohen is out of money. He was nearing bankruptcy trying to carry that on a hard money loan for 2.5 years.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Sachs, Stephen Sachs. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
No, let's just try to use a little bit of parity on time. Mr. Sachs, we have to have time for the board to have conversation as well, so let's see if you can present your side, recognizing the second hearing in 7 minutes. If you need more time, we'll deal with it, but go ahead.
Okay. There are these 2 homes, well, there are these 2 properties, 6830 and 6846. Between the 2 of them, there is a 20-foot trail. It's been there for forever. in spite of what they tell you, I've used it for many, many years. I can show you invoices for getting the tank pumped. That was the only place I could reach the tank from. About 8 foot of the encroachment is on the Cohen side, and about 12 foot is on the Storer side. I can explain to...
And just to be clear, the Cohen side is the 6846.
6846.
All right, go ahead.
I've never heard of or met Mr. Scott before today. I didn't know that he was the owner. I've always been told that Edward Cohen was the owner. Yesterday I forwarded a long response to the Storer's response, and when that property was vacant, I tried for literally 25 years to access the LA sewer system across that property. Every single time I was thwarted. I went to the hearing before Cohen built anything and pleaded with him to make sure to leave the little bit of Valleyton Trail that was left so that I could access the tank. He dismissed me. I'm accused of lying at that meeting. Cohen had an engineer who in fact completely misrepresented that Valleyton Trail was untraversable. Neighbors used to walk dogs on Valleyton Trail. I've lived there for longer than all of these people. I'm not sure what to say to you other than this trail was always there. I begged and pleaded. I asked them not to do it, and they did it anyway. I went back. I went to every single hearing. The city told me in 2018 that they'd finally reached an agreement with Cohen that he was going to give access to myself and my neighbor immediately to the east of me. That never happened. If you look at the email that I sent you, Vista Crest Drive has 8 homes on it. We have been trying since the early 1990s to tie into the sewer. The city eventually figured out a way for 6 of those homes to tie in. It unfortunately excluded myself and the Pinkerton house simply because of the physical boundaries of the universe of the geography. It left these last 2 houses unable to tie in. I don't disagree with the Storers. Having them bulldoze their patio is not even going to help me. Having Edward Cohen comply with what he agreed to, and all those documents were forwarded to you yesterday, is the way to solve this problem.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that last statement?
I said having Cohen agree to what he agreed to with the city in 2018 is the way to solve this problem.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anything else?
Nothing that I didn't put in writing to you.
I know that Commissioner Davis had some questions, so you can have a seat, sir. I'm tempted to wait a moment for him to come back. Since he had some questions, I'll tell you this. Well, let's just wait for Commissioner Davis. Sparingly, at your own risk, sir. Go right ahead.
Nothing to risk here. I've already done it. The 2018 agreement that he's referring to was an agreement that the city engineer, Sean, brought in 15 months after the house was complete and Mr. Cohen was nearing the completion of the dedication. Mr. Yepperman offered an alternative solution. It wasn't an agreement, but it was an alternative solution to the dedication, and that was to install a sewer and connect him. Upon receipt of the drawings, posting the service bond and whatnot, the city agreed to give the C of O at that time.
To give the
Issue the
certificate of occupancy.
Yes, that's in the modified condition, section 13, Mr. Yepperman's verbiage alone. And therefore, breach of contract. I mean, the certificate of occupancy should have been delivered when the plans were approved, and they were. Mr. Cohen posted the $96,000 bond. It was just an alternative. And why Mr. Yepperman even sent him down that path? It's 6 months to connect a sewer, and at $455,000 was the estimate. It was an option. It was just an option, and why he gave him that, I don't know, but that's why Mr. Cohen didn't exercise that option. We wanted to just continue with the dedication, which really shouldn't have been. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. One moment, colleagues. Mr. Jordan? Commissioner Davis, I know you may have some questions. There's one thing that, that I wanted to put on the floor, though, before we go to questions in the 21 minutes we have remaining for this hearing. We have, what I heard today, I think, colleagues, is the stores saying they obviously don't want to have to use a term that Mr. Sachs used, to bulldoze their patio. They don't want to have to bulldoze their patio. Mr. Sachs just said that it doesn't do him any good to remove the patio, and Mr. Shane, I forgot your last name, I'm sorry, Mr. Scott indicated that he supports the granting of the revocable permit for the patio. So we've got everybody agreeing on the existence of the patio, but I've got engineering recommending a denial of the revocable permit, and I've got some questions about the documents that have been challenged. So what my initial goal is to try and find a way that it's always to try and satisfy everybody, and that may be impossible, but we do have agreement here on keeping the patio from the stakeholders, not from engineering yet, but from the stakeholders, and that's why my recommendation is going to be, and I just had a private consultation with our city attorney, I would like to try and avoid a lawsuit here because it's going to cost everyone money. And people have already, we've heard Mr. Scott's testimony, he's waited years to move into this house. And it's just, a lawsuit is going to be more drain for everyone, and if we can try and find a way to avoid it, I think it's going to be a benefit to everyone. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I'm really at this point, I've heard enough. I want to talk about a solution to this problem, and I guess is it Tangerinas from engineering? Tangerine from engineering. What can we do in terms of helping to resolve this in the best interest of all the stakeholders involved here? Obviously, there's been much pain, and I do understand your original recommendation. However, I'm not so interested in that as much as having heard everything, that in the best interest would be to talk about a resolution. How could engineering implement a resolution to this problem? Now, that question was not what was your recommendation. The question is, how could engineering help to implement a resolution to this problem?
Yes, so as Mr. Scott mentioned, there is a hearing, which was actually a zoning administrator hearing for the city planning department, and that was because that property had an issue with their continuous paved roadway for the hillside ordinance. So there was a requirement for a dedication on Valleyton Trail. And as Mr. Sachs mentioned, he attended the hearing and gave his opinion about his sewer access. The zoning administrator, along with, as they mentioned, my senior civil engineer, Sean Upremian, they worked out an alternative where either 6846 provide a dedication on their property, which makes it it was, I believe, an 8-foot dedication, so it's a clear space that would allow someone to access Valleyton Trail, or the other option was to provide a 6-foot sewer easement, and that 6846 would provide a mainline sewer that they mentioned that went from Valleyton Trail to Pacific View. And both of those options, the zoning administrator and my colleague felt would allow Mr. Sachs and the neighbor to get sewer service. So if either of those happened, then as everyone mentioned, the other encroachments would be able to remain.
Great. So was this potential solution explored and discussed with the stakeholders involved who are here today?
Well, those conditions were mainly aligned with 6846. they had to do it, they had to do one of the two for them to get certificate of occupancy. As everyone mentioned, it's been 3 years, so if they never get certificate of occupancy, the encroachments from 6830 are still there, which was still the point of the complaint. So our office felt they were similar but separate, because one would depend on the other, or nothing could happen on both, which then, there would be no resolution at all. So until 6846 complies with one of those two options from their ZA, zoning administrator hearing, then there's no C of O for that property.
So after they would implement one of the two options you mentioned, then we would still have some additional work to do as it relates to helping to resolve the subsequent problems that the other stakeholders will have, correct?
Well, the pavers for 6846, there's a pavers and gate. Those are still in question because those were installed without permit as well. So we would have to work with them to either let them stay or do a new plan that is approved by us to get them permitted.
Okay. So I think as an engineer, you understand clearly what I am seeking to achieve as a member of the commission, which is a solution. Obviously, you've explained to me the complexities as it relates to one particular address, but you know that my goal is to try to implement, with your expertise, of course, a solution that would make everybody whole. And so I don't know to what degree you've had some discussions with those individuals that are here as it relates to our discussion now. Has that taken place? Have we approached this discussion with?
We have not with the stores, no.
Okay. So you are obviously available to do that.
Yes.
To have a discussion with them.
Yes.
I would certainly support and appreciate that if you could have that conversation.
Sure. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Davis, again, Adam Storr, real quickly. As I said, part of my time paying through college is working construction.
Sure.
They have alternative solutions. My understanding is 6846 did allow the 6-inch easement to the east of his property along Vista Crest Drive, as per one of the recommendations. If the city were to install a sewer line through there, they could use a sewage pump, which we have actually installed in our house because of the grade, which allows the toilet and the shower from our lower level to get pumped back up to the sewer on Pacific View Drive. They do exist. I was a 10-second Google search. They can pump 220 gallons per minute up to 75 feet, which would be
That's
more than
something, though,
sufficient.
Mr. Storr, for your meeting with them, not to be
I was
discussed
just trying to
necessarily.
suggest, Mr. Davis, is a practical solution to what the board
I know a
provides.
consensual decision has to take place to be within compliance, and that's always our goal here at the board. I do appreciate the effort and the information that you have given us, and again, as the president has said, I hope that we're able to discuss this to move towards a solution, because that's what I want to discuss here today at this point in time. I've heard the problem, I've heard the problem, I've heard the problem. I want to now move towards solution, and I appreciate your contribution to this conversation.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President James. Obviously, this is a very complex situation, so I don't think we'll probably get to a final solution. I'm just saying, I don't know how the board will, but I have a couple more information that I would like to see, and this is probably with BOE. One is, have we constructed have we done a survey and assessment of how we can actually do a sewer line for Mr. Sachs? And do we have a report on that?
So the 6846 Pacific View, as part of that ZEA, zoning administrator determination, at one point the owner agreed to do the 6-foot sewer easement with the sewer main line within that sewer easement, which would service Mr. Sachs and the neighbor. There was a drawing submitted to us, and it's still currently under review, but there is a plan, but it would be constructed and paid for by 6846 Pacific View. So there is a plan, but it hasn't been approved yet because, as Mr. Scott mentioned, of the cost of that.
So we have, there is a way to construct a sewer line for Mr. Sachs' home that we are currently trying to review the plan for?
We have it, it's been submitted, but the owner decided not to continue that because of the cost to build that sewer.
The owner, me and Mr. Sachs?
6846.
6846, the gentleman?
Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Cohen, that's here today? Yes, okay, Shane. So there's a cost aligned to that report that the owner of 6846 has decided not to continue.
Well, we have order to these hearings, so we'll have to be called on. Go ahead, Mr. Tanageri.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because of the cost, they decided to stop moving forward on processing that plan.
What is the cost? I know he kind of...
Right, they mentioned it. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's about $400,000.
To build it?
To build it, yes.
Okay, but we do have a plan. You've already done the assessment on this, right? Is there a way that we can see it?
I can provide that plan to you. It's not an approved plan, but I can provide you the plan as it is now.
Okay, that's one. My second question is the certificate of occupancy that's on hold. Is that contingent of this situation? And we have been on this for 3 years now?
Yes, so on the building permit, there are certain conditions they need to comply with, getting connection to the sewer, fixing the sidewalk or whatever it is, and along with that was this zoning administrator's determination, which talked about either an 8-foot public dedication or the 6-foot sewer easement with the sewer main line, and then along with the unpermitted pavers and gate. So all of those things need to be taken care of prior to certificate of occupancy being approved.
And has that owner, I know he's obviously here, but have they worked on that plan so that there's nothing moving us forward to getting them a certificate of occupancy?
Well, the ball is in their court because they have that option about the sewer. So they have one of those two options they can move forward with, but as of right now, nothing has been going on.
I think I would want to see kind of their list of why they can't get their certificate of occupancy. And then my last question, and this is probably for Mr. Sachs, is how did you access your septic tank in 2015?
So we have this is a recording, so we have an oral record.
Across the area between the two houses, the lot was vacant at that point.
At that point?
At that point.
Okay, and now it's not?
Now it's not. The lot, once upon a time, had a house, then it was vacant, and now it's not vacant again. In the time that it was vacant, in 10 years of vacancy, I tried many, many times to go across that property to tie into the sewer. I was thwarted each time.
Okay, thank you for that. Those are my questions only.
Okay. Commissioner Caloza, then Commissioner Davis.
Okay, can I have Wesley come back up and ask you a few questions? So just wanted to ask additional questions for you with some points brought up about the city's work as it relates to the specific permit and what work we've done so far. Has BOE done any field investigation to date?
No.
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 Okay. Typical of reviewing these permits, do we typically do any field investigations?
So regarding the revocable
Yes.
permit, there are times when, yes, we do field investigations. However, this particular one, we felt we had all the information with our maps and the survey and the aerial photographs that showed the encroachments were in Valleyton Trail, so there was no need for us to go out, because when you go out to a property, there's no way of us knowing where the property lines are without survey equipment.
And so you thought it was clear from the maps already where the property lines were?
Yes. We did make a drive-by, but again, you can't really see their backyard because of the encroachments in front of them from 6846.
And to kind of, for this right-of-way that the city has that we're saying now, is there any danger in the city allowing this encroachment? Just so I'm clear, like, is there, what is...
Like a public danger, public safety?
Is there, what benefit is there to the city to have this right-of-way? I'm just curious if there's any other, I know there's a storm drain easement adjacent to this, but just curious if there's anything else there that the city is trying to maintain, just for reference.
To my knowledge, other than a complaint, there's no issues that I'm aware of the encroachments in the public right-of-way.
Have you met with any of the other property owners that we've talked about?
Only Mr. Sachs and Mr. Cohen, and then those are the only other neighbors.
Okay. Just think that I am, definitely in agreement with my colleagues in terms of trying to reach a solution that works for as many parties as possible, knowing that maybe not all parties may be pleased. I know the cost, and there seems to be multiple projects colliding here at the same time, holding up, this encroachment with the other issues at nearby properties. But I don't know what the answer to this is, but just I'm putting it out there in terms of a potential to come to a resolution, in terms of a potential shared cost here, since everyone would benefit from getting this issue unstuck in terms of all the properties moving forward. I know that the $400,000 is a huge cost, but it seems like many people would benefit from it. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but think that maybe that's potentially one conversation to have with all the property owners involved here about what that would look like. I don't have any additional questions for you right now, but did just want to make that comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Closa. Commissioner Davis?
I also would like to say, and just get back on focus again, we've heard some information here that is valuable to the solution, and I'd love to see us work with all of the stakeholders that are here to reconnect with my initial statements about implementing a solution from revocable permits, whatever it is necessary that can possibly be done, and we are always looking for a solution within the confines of what is permissible. So that's never a question. What I'd love for us to do under your leadership is to work with them, and Mr. Story, I think if that is his correct last name, made some offers based upon his experience, not only just as a resident, but as a professional as well. I'd love for us to be open to whatever is permissible to implement a solution. And I think under your direction, under your leadership, and representing the city as one of our able engineers, I have faith and I have trust that you could help us move in that direction to help resolve this. That's what I'd like to see.
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
So, regarding the next date for a hearing update, Dr. Campos, I would be inclined to we've got, obviously, Mr. Scott wants to move into his home, and we've got these other issues. The stores want this resolved, as does Mr. Sachs. But we need time for engineering. I want to get some clarity on issues regarding the documents that the stores have raised. I also would like for engineering to meet with the applicants on this. So my thought would be to have an update, and maybe it would be, the goal would be an update that would maybe get us close to a resolution, so I would propose March 18th. It's not 30 days out, but it's also more than 2 weeks. Is that okay with you, Mr. Tanageri? Okay. For the stores, everybody has calendars. Mr. Sachs, Mr. Scott, March 18th? Okay. Then that would be the update. Mr. Sachs? Okay. Yeah, and while he's looking at that, is that enough time, Mr. Tanageri, for a field investigation that's been referenced or not?
We can definitely do a field investigation and start discussions, but this will be a very complex problem because one of the reasons is the encroachments of 6848 are there now. There's a deck and a pool and then his gate and encroachments. So if one of the options was to do the sewer, a lot of that might need to be removed. So it would be complex, but if compromises can be done by both sides, then, maybe we can work something out. But we can definitely start discussions.
Well, the one reason that we keep a date like March 18th is it keeps the parties busy. They know that they have to come back to the board and report progress. And people are busy, so it keeps action, keeps activity going.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sachs, you're not in town on the 18th? Could you come to the microphone? I'm sorry, just so we have a...
I'm actually out of town that entire week until the 22nd.
Okay, you're out of town till the 22nd. March 11th, we have a recycler hearing. How about Friday, March 13th?
I don't have an issue with that.
I'm sorry?
I don't have an issue with Friday.
Okay. Mr. Storer? You'll be out of town. Okay. Well, I understood, Mr. Scott, but everybody's got, and you can propose that solution to the group. But here, how long will this take? Well, okay, that means 30, but go ahead.
The simple solution is just to have it pumped through his own front yard.
To have what?
The septic tank, he can access it through his own front yard. And he does it once every 15 years. Problem solved. I can move in my house, I can close escrow, Mr. Cohen can get on with his life, they can get on with theirs.
Okay, but now we're getting into the discussion that we're not going to have with the
yes,
board.
but that is the
You all
solution.
can propose it there. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Because I at least saw some hesitation there. So we're still trying to get agreement on a date. So March 9th is not, that's less than 2 weeks. So let's move it to March 25th.
Sorry about that. You may proceed. I will, however, not be here.
Okay.
But that does mean that the board can't.
Right. March 25th? You're out? Okay. The 11th, we have a recycler hearing, but we could, how about March 11th? Okay. Okay. Then how about 9th is too early. You're out the 11th and 13th. He's out the week of the 16th. That takes us to the week of the 23rd. How about March 25th? March 25th? March 25th? March 25th? Okay. Right. So Mr. Jordan's out, but okay, so let's go ahead and schedule it March 25th. Unless you want, well, the one thing about Mr. Jordan, you've been hearing, will you be back by April 1? How about April 1, everybody? That way we have everybody. Mr. Jordan's been here for all the hearings. I just think it's valuable because we've had legal issues and, yeah. So it's going to be Wednesday, April 1st. Okay, Wednesday, April 1st for the next hearing on this. In the meantime, the field investigation, the meeting with the applicants, the clearance of the disputes on the documents that have been made on the record. We'll have all that at least done and ready for discussion on April 1. All right, thank you, everyone. Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then, colleagues, I have one adjourning motion I'd like to read before we adjourn in honor of a close friend who I've worked with. She's worked with us at Public Works over the years, and she was a political director at SEIU 721 who died way too young. Hilda Patricia Garcia Martinez, age 43, passed away on February 16, 2020, peacefully among her family and close friends. She was born on June 22, 1976 in Los Angeles and grew up in the city of Van Nuys, located in the San Fernando Valley. Hilda was very well known for her political career. She got her big break and caught the political bug in 1997 when she was a lawn sign coordinator for Richard Alarcon's historic 31-vote win in his campaign for state senate. During this time, she also learned the power of grassroots organizing and made lifelong friends, mentors, and colleagues like Los Angeles City Council President Nuri Martinez, and Council President Martinez spoke at Hilda's services on Saturday that I attended. In 1998, Hilda became office manager for Assemblymember Sheila Kuehl and quickly made her way to senior field representative after helping Assemblymember Kuehl win her state Senate campaign in 2000. Hilda worked closely on Senator Kuehl's universal health care bill and also her passion project, the Pico Youth Center, bringing attention and resources to minority at-risk youth in the city of Santa Monica, where she not only sat on the board but also mentored several at-risk youth during her free time. Always wanting to help, mentor, and show at-risk youth that they have other alternatives, and always leading by example, Hilda joined the City of Los Angeles Mayor's Office of Gang Reduction and Youth Development in 2008. On July 23, 2011, little did she know her life would change forever when she would meet the love of her life and future husband, Mike Martinez. Hilda always mentioned how blessed she was to have Mike in her life, and she dreamt of one day having a house large enough for her, Mike, their beautiful goddaughter Luna, and the whole family to live in. In 2015, Hilda found a new passion and home at SEIU 721 in the RN division and soon moved back into politics as a political coordinator, and that's where we had the pleasure and the honor to work with Hilda on so many issues. She championed and protected workers' rights. Most recently, she helped lead organized workers to successfully lobby the vote to have the Los Angeles City Council take further steps to both protect rideshare drivers and recapture lost tax revenue by establishing the 30-hour living wage ordinance for rideshare drivers in Los Angeles. That's $30 an hour. And as always, she found her passion project in 2018 by helping lead SEIU 721's Faith Caravan, which brought social workers, registered nurses, and other frontline healthcare professionals to the U.S.-Mexico border to deliver food, tents, backpacks, sleeping pads, food, diapers, toiletries, feminine products, clothes, and other donations to the thousands of Central American asylum seekers who have been stranded there for some time. Hilda was a social justice champion and became a voice for the voiceless. You always wanted her on your team because she kept it real, and I can tell you she did. She gave everything and asked for nothing. These are some of the many reasons that we loved Hilda. She's gone too soon and never forgotten, and may we honor Hilda by speaking out against injustices when others remain silent so that Hilda's memory will live forever, and we adjourn in my good friend Hilda's honor. Thank you, everyone.